So just taping up the borders. It's a bit hard to get it straight. So I've just sold out of the emerald green on my website. So I need to make some more. I recently put a post of these minis, the pink ones, on my Instagram. And I got a lot of people saying they're perfect, don't worry. But if you can see, it's this I don't like, as well as the paper quality. The paper is not the same quality as this one. So I've decided to redo these ones. They're not listed at the moment. Purely because they don't match the current ones that are listed in quality and size. So we have Winsor & Newton watercolors. And I will be using Rosemary & Co. It's a travel brush. I might use the short flat brush today. Normally I will use the dagger brush. I think this is the 1/4 inch. These are quite small, but I want a kind of whimsical, misty feel for these ones. And I just feel like using the flat brush today, so I will. I've got 2 jars of water, and I'm focusing on 3 main colours. Hard to see, but I've got sap green, I think. I can't remember what this green is. I always forget. This one is, can't even see it because there's just so much. Olive green. There you go. Olive, sap green, olive green, and perylene green. Paint all over my fingers. Terrible. I'm just testing out a new workspace. Thinking all white would be wonderful. It's not. Because I get colour absolutely everywhere. So I've got 2 containers of paint. I'm getting sap green, and I want a kind of very light feel for the first layer. So I'm going to add some, I think this is Winsor yellow, just to tone it down a little bit. The good thing about using these paints, most of these paints in this palette, I know are single pigment, which is a fancy way of saying they only use one type of powder to make this colour. So when I mix different colours together, it's a lot more user-friendly, I guess, in that I'd rarely get muddy colours because I know each colour is what they call single pigment, and I'm making landscape with similar properties this time. So I just dipped my brush in the water to get a more even coverage, but then I blotted it out on my paper towel. I do that often. I always have paper towel, because the best thing about controlling watercolor is controlling the water. It's called watercolor. So your main component in this medium is the water. If you can control the water, you can control what you paint. So as an artist who used to use acrylic, I switched to watercolor while I was traveling, purely for the convenience of it, and I never looked back. Okay, so that's our first layer. I'm going to go back in with my green, and I'm going to pick up some of the olive. Now I have quite a dry brush, and I haven't pre-wet these paints, and that's all part of controlling the water and what goes in. So I'm picking up a little bit of water from the palette and just dipping it in the dry pan, and that helps to control what's on my brush. And especially with small work, you can really see the difference if you control the amount of water in your brush. Just wiped off the excess paint there, and I'm going to spread that out and bring it down. My brush is quite incredibly dry, so this is helping me get that misty effect. A little bit of water and pigment, dipping it into the olive green, and I'll do the same here. Wiping off the excess on the paper towel and then feathering it out to get that. Now it's too dry, so I'm dipping my brush in the water, wiping off the excess. There we go. That works. Again, I feel like it's tiny wee bit too dry, but that's okay, we're working with it. The key with watercolor, especially on such a small scale as well, is contrast. Some of the perylene green now, mixing some of that in with the olive, and I'm going to, that paper is still quite wet underneath, so that is taking the pigment that I'm putting down and spreading it automatically. I'm not having to do much. So what I've done is I've often dipped my brush into the water and then dried off the excess. Now I'm just trying to break up that harsh line just to achieve that misty feel. And that seems to be working nicely. We've got two very subtle layers there. Okay, so you see I'm constantly wiping the excess paint. I picked up a little bit of perylene. Now I'm going to just accentuate that horizon line there. So as we get closer, to your point of view, some more details begin to emerge. It's hard to see on the camera, but in this section here, automatically the paint has kind of found its way, made a ridge line, but there's quite a lot of yellow still showing through, and I like that. I think that's really nice. Kind of has the reflection of the whole landscape. I am going to swap to a small brush now. So this one is a 0, I think it's a 0, no, it's a 00, so it's quite small. and also another small brush. This is called an eradicator. It is very hard bristles, acrylic bristles I think, and it's quite short. And this is great for lifting up paint. So I'm dipping it in my water, I'm dabbing just a tiny bit of the moisture off, and I'm coming in and I'm going to try and lift out some paint. It's not working too much because this kind of, I know this, I should have known this. I've let it dry too much, and this particular colour, which is the sap green, it's not a super staining colour. And what that means is when I try to lift out the colour a little later on, you don't get much of a contrast. This one I use more olive green in the bottom, and so you can see it is lifting just slightly. That will do for now, because I'm going to increase the contrast in these sections here. So to do that, I've got my 00 brush, and I'm going to pick up some perylene green. I'm just making some horizon lines and increasing that contrast. Painting in some bushes and being careful to leave some of that colour of the mountain that you can see through the bushes. That gives it a sense of light, I guess. Now I'm just putting in some water ripples, just in a darker colour. I'm going to put in a headland at the start, just here. And what that's going to do is it's going to draw our eyes further afield, which is what we want. We want that sense of distance. And after this is dry, I'm going to put in the reflections, but I've never done this before. I'm going to put in a little boat. So I've just got the edge, the end of my little, it's so cute. That's super cute. On the little boat. So again, increasing the contrast on this side. Now, because this is a lot drier, I'm not going to get that feathered effect just there. So instead, I'm going to make quite a defined area. Rinsing off the brush. So I've put the same kind of ripples down the bottom here. So because the headland is a different shape, I'm not going to have room for the little boat, but I think it wouldn't work in this scene like it does in that, because there was such a large area in that section there. So I'm picking up a little bit more water, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to define that headland at the back there just a little more. And I'm going to drop in the darkness a little bit extra, just so we have that contrast. This is close to being finished already. I don't want to overwork it, and that's another trick, I guess, with any painting, is knowing where to stop. So rinsing out my brush, and you can see in my palette here I have gold. It's a handmade gold. So all of my materials and everything is listed on my website. You can download a PDF that goes through all of my materials if you're interested in knowing what they are. And I'm just activating that because it's a handmade gold. I'm putting so much water into this pan and it's soaking it straight up. I'm not going to be able to get any decent paint until I've put a lot of water in there. It just loves soaking up the water, I think just because the way it's made. And so I have to activate it quite a lot. So I've got the gold. And I'm going to make highlights. So this to me is a night scene, so I'm going to put the moon quite large just there. And reflections on the water. These are very, very subtle. I'm going to put the reflection also on the boat to draw your eye to that little scene. That's super cute. This one will be slightly different. Very cute. Okay, for me, they are done. I still have pink ones to paint, but this is the best bit. Peeling off the tape and revealing what's underneath. It's just about perfect. still slightly wet. You can see the sheen. That's super cute. So I'll list these two later on my website. Later this afternoon. This one's my favourite though. I think it's that boat. It's that little boat. Oh, that's super cute. How cute is that? Just the sparkle. It's hard to capture on the camera, but just in some lights, that sparkle is just lovely. So you can see there it's not quite square there, so I'm going to fix that up because that's something that I really love, is that sharp edge. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Awesome. So I've got those two. Like I said, they'll be on the store later this afternoon once I've finished up here. But I have all of these. So these were the mistakes. And you can see like the quality is just not the same. I had so many comments on Instagram about what I should do with them, but they are going into the bin. They're just not up to scratch. I like that one. I love that section at the end. Yeah. So there's just no crisp line. And because I was not concentrating, I wonder if you can see it. Yeah, like that's off center. Those borders are much bigger on that side than they are this side. So I'm going to paint a couple of them now. And I have a couple of these left over. So I've pre-cut all of these to the size that I want. They are super cute. There's that one, it's that one. I'm not going to use that one. It's got a mark on it. And I'm fussy. Now, I'm going to reuse the tape because you can. It's not a problem. Excuse me. So getting these borders straight is the bane of my existence. So each time it goes through quite a process of trying to figure out what to keep and what to throw away. They look small and they look quite detailed, but you get very fussy after a while. So if you are watching right now, I'd love to know where you're from. You can probably tell from my accent, I am from Australia. A lot of these scenes actually are from around my home state called Tasmania, which is the very southern part of Australia. We are the state that has the Tasmanian devil. Georgia. I have never been to Georgia. I've never been to the States, to be honest. I'd like to go one day. But from my little part of the world, it's so far away. So if you you Google Tasmania, one of the things that comes up almost immediately is the hiking trails. I've had a couple of shows in like art shows in Oregon, USA, and from what I looked up in Oregon, there's also a lot of hiking and a lot of nature. So I wonder if that's why it kind of resonates with people there. Because that's exactly what Tassie has, is a lot of hiking and nature and outdoors and scenes that are just like this. You can't beat the food. Well, that's one thing that I do love is food. Food from Georgia. What kind of, okay, as a tourist coming to Georgia, what is something that you have to have, that you shouldn't miss as in regards to food? That is not straight, I can tell. Let's do this. Okay. So this set, I'm particularly interested in replicating these colours. And trying to have more of a cohesive look about them. I've done them in portrait mode. I probably should go landscape because I've been really wanting to. I should have done that. Let's do that now. I'll do one in portrait, one in landscape. There you go. I think it needs to be done. Okay, so what brush will we use? Should we use the one we did before? Yeah, so again, I'm going to go back in with the flat. Go to Texas. They have something called dino ribs. Each one is 3 pounds a rib, which is huge. Pounds. Okay, I'm assuming that's 1.5 kilos. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so I want that feel, I want that misty feel, but I want it in these colors. I particularly like the tree ones that I did with the trees and the headland. It just reminds me of like a lake scene or something like that. A lot of these minis come from obviously imagination, but I have spent a lot of time in the outdoors and around alpine lakes and things like that. So I do want to have a lot of that. Oh, very nice. I do want to have that kind of feel in the work because, yeah, like I said, I spent a lot of time in the mountains. If you have a look at Tassie, that is, see, that's way too dark. Way too dark for a background. So I'm going to put my brush in water and I'm going to try and thin that out as much as possible. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, so to fix that problem, I've just wiped off the excess. Oopsie. Wiped off the excess on my paper towel. And I'm just going to pick up as much pigment as I can to lighten that background. So if you work quickly, you're able to take that up. Okay. Still a little bit too dark. I should have watered that down like we mentioned before. Watercolor is how much water that controls your color. Okay. I'm going to do something else because I'm being spontaneous. No, that didn't work. It was too dry. Yeah. I was going to make some clouds. I'll do it on the next one. some paints. No, just do it. Honestly, I found some old paintings of mine that I had forgotten that I had. That is uneven. Is that uneven? It looks uneven. Let me just fix that up. I found some old paintings that I had. And many people think that art is just this hidden talent that you have, but they don't understand how much practice channels certain parts to become what ends up becoming a recognizable part of you. On my channel you'll probably find there's a lot of abstract work. I'm an abstract person by nature, but it's these landscapes I found, I just fell into, I think, because of where I lived. That's working. See, I'm blotting this out. And there's something that's happened with the paper. Can you see on the camera there that that's kind of granulated a little bit? That is annoying. That is the paper not behaving in a way it should. And the reason for that, so watercolor paper, how much you paint sure. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just, sorry, I'm doing 100 things at once here. I'm going to accentuate some of these clouds just using some paint that I've mixed up on the palette. But I'm just dropping in to create these abstract cloud shapes. So as we mentioned just before, there's some kind of beading at the bottom, and that is the watercolor paper having issues. So this paper I actually got on sale. So I was expecting not to be able to use all of it, because if it's on sale, it means one, it's quite old. And if it wasn't stored properly, then a thing called the sizing goes. And by go, I mean go off, as in expire. So watercolor paper, 100% cotton is your best friend. Some people say it's quite expensive, and in comparison, yes, it is. But it's how you get these beautiful bleeds. It's basically a tool. Like a hairdresser is not going to use kitchen scissors to cut your hair because even though it's the same thing, it's not the tool for the job. And it's the same with paper. So 100% cotton is wonderful, but it has to be 100% cotton watercolor paper, because that's the tool that gets the job done. And many people kind of forget that you need to work with tools. Even if it is a hobby, many times the tools is what makes the difference between it being an enjoyable one and a frustrating one. So watercolor paper has this thing in it called sizing, and what that is I think it's like a chemical coating or something like that, and it gives the paper the properties that is needed in order for you to paint on it effectively. Now when the paper is old, or if it's not stored correctly, that sizing or that coating on the paper expires, and when it expires, it does unpredictable things. Example, this kind of beading on the bottom. So I'm just painting in my first layer of mountains here, and I really like the composition of this one and the shape. So because this is the first layer, I'm just laying in some of the highlights of the water in the foreground, and I kind of want to build that up a little bit. And because this one, the sizing at the bottom has changed, I'm going to employ a slightly different method, maybe one that looks a little bit more like this. so I can cover that sizing problem with the paint. Because I actually quite like how the shapes of the clouds have turned out. So I want to maintain that or keep that. So, that's lovely. That's working well. So I'm just going to fill in that section there. You can see from my brush it's quite dry. So what I've done, even though the paint's still wet there, I'm going to rinse off my brush, wipe off the excess, and I'm going to create a section here that I can come back and work with later. So I'm just lifting out that wet paint to reveal more of a lighter section. It's not actually working very well, and I have a feeling it's the paper, not my paint today. So it's a slightly bit lighter, which is fine. Another thing, actually, that could be it too, is I have been working today with Potter's Pink, which, to be honest, is not my favorite color. You know what? This needs a little bit of orange in the sky. So dry brush, and I'm just dry brushing over the top with very minimal pigment. Oh, that looks pretty. It's like a peach. Yeah, that's pretty. Pretty. Okay. Back to my small 001 brush. So masking tape. So it's a kind of masking tape, but it's a Japanese masking tape. It's called Nito. It's hard to find. It cost about $35 a roll on eBay in Australia. I have a list of all of my supplies, everything, on my website. That's a downloadable PDF. Because I always get so many questions about materials. And it's got like links to the suppliers as well. So you don't have to go searching, you can just download it from there. For tape. Yes, I know, right? I feel the same way. But having said that, it's 35 Australian dollars too, which I don't know what that is in US dollars, but it works perfectly every time, if it's with the paper that I have as well. And that's an interesting thing. That's what people don't realize. Where am I? So this here, you can see how the borders are not crisp at all, whereas this one here, absolutely no problem. Like, there's a big difference in the borders there. Okay, and the reason for that is the paper. So it's used in conjunction, it's used together, and that's what you have to remember too. Like, you have to find what is working for your practice. Just darkening that section up there, and then do the same on this side. That's that. Oh, thanks. Okay, so now I'm going in with the colour. That is going to make it pop. So I've done essentially 3 layers on all of these, 3 or 4 layers, and going in with the darkest possible colour. And for me, that's my choice. I love indigo. That's my go-to colour for just about everything. I love it. Actually, I might put a little bit more purple in those. Having said that, because purple is what works in these two. Okay, so what I'm really liking about both of these in separately is this cloudscape. Probably a little bit harder to see, but the cloudscape really works. This one, it's lacking quite a lot, to be honest, right now. And I will attempt to fix that with this last layer. Okay, so probably because, yes, I'm working so small, I haven't used a lot of water. Now, watercolor is incredible in when it starts to, when you let it go and it starts to take its own form and decide where to go, especially the wet on wet technique. Some of you YouTube, you'll find plenty of that. I tend not to work like that with watercolor myself, and I think that's because I started with acrylic. So I kind of use watercolors more like an acrylic painting, which is not great, like, because I'm not using the full advantage of the watercolor. But having said that, that's okay. I don't mind one bit. I find this process quite relaxing. The wet on wet techniques, though, I see some artists use them and they're really wonderful. They really, really know how to make it pop and come out. It's beautiful. So I'm just going to soften that edge a little bit there with a little bit of water. Okay, and this one, so I had gold originally in this, but I'm going to go with silver. And the reason for that is because I like the lightness in the lake part just here, and I want to maintain that if I can. So what I will do is I'm just getting my handmade silver, and I'm just going to pop a little bit of that over the painting. Rinse off my brush. I'm just going to spread that over and hopefully not disturb the layers underneath. You can't see it in this light, and that's completely fine. I'm going to do the same for up the top here. This silver colour is incredible in that in some light you're able to paint over the top. In some lights you can see this incredible like glittery shine, and it just looks like stars. So, and on the other one I'm going to use gold. Gold, gold, gold. It's a little gold moon. So subtle, but it's going to look very good. Okay, time for the tape peel reveal. And it works, yay! Ta-da! That is lovely. Look at that. That's very pretty. So for me, I like this so much better than that. So this is the right size. That is not. This has a clean, crisp border. That does not. That is very cute. I like that one very much. That's the tiny treasure. And then let's peel this one off too. I actually quite like this one too. This one's going to be a different one because it's got the silver. Ta-da. So I haven't listed any pink ones on the store yet because I hadn't been happy with any of them, but I'm happy with these two. Oh, that's very cute. Ta-da. See, I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but that tiny sparkle, it's very, very subtle, and it's only in some lights. Yeah, you can see that there. That's pretty cool. And I like how that's kind of like such a different shape in the middle. I think that worked really well. And I didn't consciously do it, but it's something that I do notice what happens composition wise. So when I was painting in the headlands, I had this large one on the left hand side, and that was where the weight, I guess, of the painting was sitting. And I didn't explain it because I wasn't conscious of it, but I do notice it now that I evened that out by putting the weight of the foreground on this side. And what that does, it just balances out the composition a bit better. Yeah, I'm a big fan. However, now that I see something, I'm just going to fix this little section up here because I feel like that needs to come down just ever so slightly. Be careful not to paint outside that nice crisp border that I painted. Ta-da! That's a little bit better. I'm going to bring that down just a little as a shadow. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool. And then I just had an idea. Okay, I'm getting some of the indigo, and as a point of interest, I'm just going to put one there and one there. That's so cute. That's super cute. I just put the birds in and then brought the shadow of that headland down a little bit. Oh, that's cute. So all 4 of these. So I've sold out of the green ones as of literally an hour ago. So that's why I thought I'd better paint a couple more. These will go up live on site. I'll just put them up again, maybe as soon as I get off of here. And then I'll have to list the ruby ones now because I actually have them. It's ruby good. So I've been naming the tiny treasures after like precious stones because I love precious stones. So I've got citrine, which is like the orange and sunsets. I've got the emerald, which is all sold out, and I have the sapphire, which is my favorite. But pink, I was thinking ruby, but rubies are generally red. I don't know what other pink gems there are. There's pink diamond, but that's a bit there. Maybe it'll be ruby. That's cool. Oh, thanks. I like the little boatman in this one. That's super cute. He is sitting there chilling on his little boat. That's pretty cute. So that's cool. I do have, actually, I can show you. These are different ones because, so the green, the emerald, the citrine, the ruby, and the sapphire. Here are the examples of the other ones that I have. So these are the citrine, which is more like your oranges and your sunsets. These are all still on the website. Okay. So these ones, I choose which ones to send off because they're all very similar but all extremely different because they're all original. So I choose to send these ones, and this one's the sapphire. I really like the sapphire ones, they're cute. They're so calm. So that's why they're a little bit cheaper on the website too, because you can't, like, you don't know what you're getting. It's like a surprise. But I've just listed 3 more, I think, which I really like. I've spent a lot of time on these, but I forgot to film it. Look at that. That is the Aurora. That's beautiful. So that just went up on the website this morning. Yeah. And these are more expensive because they're one of a kind. Like, literally, I spent a long time on this. This one, I love this one too. Look at that. It's just like a sunrise. That's pretty cute. And the last one is like my hometown in the tropics in far north Queensland. The sky is always like that. It's always blue and sunny and hot. So yeah, these just all went up live this morning. But yeah, this one is one of my favorites, and the Aurora. I mean, I'm not saying this either because I'm like, this is so wonderful. It's just there's so much pleasure in making these. Oh, and this is a mistake. I was like trying to have a candle that had smoke and it looks like it got lit by lightning. So I'm not selling this one. I'm keeping it as a reminder that sometimes not everything you have goes to plan. And this didn't go to plan, but it's still kind of cute. I like the background. I like how it's very dark and moody. But I'm going to have to play with smoke a little bit more. Having said that, I've got a video coming out. In my sketchbook, I was playing with smoke, and I like how it turned out. I hadn't done it before, and I did now. So that will be coming out shortly as well as like sketchbook tips and stuff like that. That's coming out shortly on what to do and how to do it and all that jazz. So that's it for today. Looks like heaven to me. It's pretty heavenly. Very cool. Thank you for following along, everyone, and I'll see you on the next live, which is, I don't know when it is because, yeah, I'm all over the place. But videos generally every Monday and every Thursday. And we'll see you all soon. Bye.